What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Today I want to talk about the African American exploitation of Africa. The African American exploitation of Africa. Because I knew at some point that we were going to get to this point where African Americans will go to Africa with the sole purpose of exploiting Africa for its natural resources, right? And in this case, African Americans, right, a certain group of African Americans who I would consider Pookies and Ray Rays, right? Pookies and Ray Rays that got enough money to buy a plane ticket are going to Africa with the express purpose of exploiting African women for their own sexual gratification, right? They don't have any respect for Africa. They don't have respect for the African culture. They don't have respect for their connection as African Americans to the African culture. They don't go over there with the intentions of reconnecting with their people. They don't have no intentions of going over there and reconnecting with their roots. Their sole purpose is to go to Africa as a new place to possibly find new prostitutes to have sex with, because they themselves do not have any charisma, any game to get those very same women in America in their own communities. And I've noticed a lot of these African American exploiters of Africans, what they're running into is they're finding out that Africa doesn't have such a robust sex industry, sex tourism industry, as a lot of these other countries like Thailand, Colombia, Brazil, Dominican Republic, the Netherlands in Europe, Thailand in Asia, the Philippines. All these countries are places where the sex industry is robust. Most of these places, the sex industry is legal, right? Mexico is another place. So these black African American exploiters who they don't value Africans at all. They don't value, they're not going over there for the right purposes, right? But they're finding out that when you go there, it's more expensive because they're used to buying cheap prostitutes, right? That's why they fly to Colombia, because the prostitutes are very cheap. You can get more than one explosion for your buck, right? Because in America, you'll spend, let's say on the cheap end, right? If you're lucky, if you get a halfway decent hookah, right, you're gonna still spend a couple $100, right? And then most of these guys, they're gonna last about 30 seconds, and they just spent $100 on 30 seconds with a woman that gave you no emotion, no fantasy, just like put it in, there you go, get out, because that's America, right? That's how they work, right? Or if you're gonna get a high price one and you want the girlfriend experience, or you want the overnight experience, right? You're gonna pay 15, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and sometimes like even up to 10,000 for the super upper class fly you out Instagram hookers, right? Instagram, a lot of the women are hookers online. I mean, most of the Instagram models are hookers, right? They get flown out to Dubai where they get shitted on and pissed on for money. Then they come back and flex the money that they spend after getting shitted on and pissed on by Arabs. And, and they pretend like that shit didn't happen, right? But that's what happens over there to the skank scalawags, the Instagram model, right? But the hookers, the ones that, the male ones, the tricks, right? They're so used to the cheap peso, right? They're so used to Latin America because America has thoroughly destroyed Central and South America. And because America has thoroughly destroyed the economies of Central and South America, their currency is almost absolutely shit. And because of that, your American dollar goes a long way to buying those hookers where you can get a whole hookah for like 24 hours for a couple $100 at the most, right? But what I'm finding is funny is a lot of these tricks, when they go to Africa, right, to try to, look for the hookahs, they realize that damn, it's a lot more expensive over there than expected, right? Because people expect South American cheap, right? When we say Africa's cheap, what we say, like when people like me, a Pan-African, an African person who goes to, because the majority of African Americans go to Africa, 99.99% of African Americans who go to Africa are going to reconnect with their ancestors, reconnecting with their culture, reconnecting with their history, reconnecting with their root, right? They're going there and they see the intrinsic value of everything, and the women are also included in that value. But the exploiters, the ones that are still practicing the practices of their slave masters, the white man, who've been going and exploiting, I mean, that's what they do, right? So those traits are still inherent in the Pookies and Ray Rays who are retarded, right? And they just want to act like that, and they think that they can go to a continent, sorry, because there's many countries in Africa, go to a continent and exploit the women the same way they see their white buddies do, right? Right? And then they get some, you know, they always got to make a name up. The Passport Bros, which was started by white people, right? But of course it's made popular by black people because black people do everything cooler than everybody else. So now it just looks like black people, right? Now you got a bunch of broke, because keep in mind, all these Pookies and broke. Because if these Pookies weren't broke, let me tell you something. Not one Passport Bro is a baller. They're all broke. Let me tell you why. Because if they had money, they wouldn't have to actually fly all the way to these countries to buy cheap hookers. Because if they had money, they would fly out the women that they actually like because they had the money to pay for it, right? They'd be able to afford the American woman. They would be able to afford it, but they can't, right? Plus, they ain't got no game to get one that's not free. You know what I'm saying? They can't get the free ones because they ain't got no game for that. So all of them are broke, but they figured something out, just like a lot of people figured out on YouTube. People realize that there are people who will watch you go over there and get hookers because they want to know where the hookers at so that they can get on a plane and go find the hookers, right? Right? But they complain about everything else. Like, if you're a baller, if you go over there and you pretend like you're a baller, because that's what you do. You go there, you use your I'm an American. You got all the Africans thinking you're a baller. You get on YouTube and you act like you're a baller. The people gonna expect you to have money and spend it, right? You know, you can't complain about the prices if you a baller, because only cheap people complain about prices all goddamn day long. That means you ain't got it, right? What they say, it ain't tricking if you got it, but you ain't got it, I guess it's tricking, right? But I knew this day was gonna come at some point once Africans, you know, African Americans started to go to Africa. I knew there was gonna be a contingent of stupid, dumb Pookie and Ray Rays that got just enough money to buy that plane ticket and go to some of these countries and exploit the local populations, right? So we're exploiting the Asians, exploiting Europe, exploiting South America. But where the buck stops is Africa, bro. That's supposed to be off limits. That is supposed to be off limits. When any African American goes to Africa, they should not be going with the sole purpose of exploiting our African women, right, for the purposes of sex. I think that African women have been exploited enough throughout history, and we don't need another group of arrogant, dumb young dudes full of cum and a few American bucks going over there exploiting the African women once again, right? And then there's plenty of men going over there to look for wives, which is fine, A-OK. But when you go over there and with your lack of knowledge, a lack of historical knowledge, lack of political knowledge, lack of any type of knowledge, and you go and you start to exploit and judge women who you don't know. Because listen, it takes more than a few weeks in a country to know anything. You can't just go to a country for like 10 days and act like you're an expert. You don't know anything. Because while you're on vacation, everybody's working. You're not even on African time. You're still on American time, right? So I encourage all my people who's looking forward to going to Africa, don't take advice from people who have no knowledge, no political, no cultural knowledge of a place. They go there for like 5 days and all of a sudden they're expert. They don't know what they're talking about. Don't listen to people who constantly complain about being broke. That means they don't know how to move about. That means they didn't plan right and they went to a place and they weren't prepared. You don't listen to people like that because they're going to set you up. They're going to get you going to some of these places and you think you can do what they do. But when you find out, when you get there, you can't do what they do, right? Because you weren't lucky enough to, you just weren't lucky enough to be in the situation other people are in, right? And I think African people need to, I know they want African Americans to come because they're so nice, right? They're so nice and they're so welcoming. But African people need to start watching out for those African Americans that come there with the express purpose of exploiting the women for their own selfish reasons, looking for hookers, right? And then using those hookers and say this represents the country, because none of those hookers represent the countries. Hookers are hookers no matter what country you go to, and they got one express purpose. They're gonna do and say anything to get the money that you got in your pocket out of your pocket into their pockets. And that's just what it is. You can't believe any hooker that you see on TV. Guaranteed. Because there's one thing you can't do in Africa. I'm gonna keep it real. Unless you're looking for hookers. Like, the only time you're gonna see a woman on the internet with a dude in Africa, they're either actually hookers, right? Actually hookers, or there's somebody they really and truly know, because women don't really roll like that in these conservative traditional countries, right? They don't really roll. Most of them are looking for wives. If anybody tell you that the majority of African women are not looking for wives, they don't know what the fuck you're talking about. They just, look, if you ain't got no game in America, you ain't got no game anywhere. Women are women no matter what country you go to. It doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter how much, you know, what culture it is. A woman is still a woman, is still a woman, is still a woman. And a black woman is still a black woman, is still a black woman. And let me tell you another thing for you aspiring first travelers to Africa. When you go to West Africa, you're gonna run into you. You're gonna run into the same women that you can't get over here. You're gonna run into them same women over there, all right? I'm just telling you, the black women in West Africa, where your peoples come from, right? The women gonna look like the women here. The ones in your neighborhood that you trying to avoid, they're gonna act like the women here. The ones in your neighborhood that you trying to avoid. The only difference is they're gonna have a different cultural mix and flavor to it. But that black West African black woman is a West African black woman. And if you don't know what a West African black woman look like and act like and how their attitude and mannerisms are, then you ain't been paying attention to the black women in your community. Period. That's why when you go to West Africa, you're not gonna be as special, because you're just another black person who look like them. There's nothing, unless you going over there and you making it rain with USD, you ain't special, because there's African men over there that can make USD rain all day long. And they from that country. And when you go there to West Africa, you're gonna see a bunch of black dudes like you, who you have to compete with. So if you can't compete with the black dudes in your neighborhoods and in your circles, and if is the reason why you can't get a woman is because when you get measured up to the next black man, you're the one that gets picked last, then when you go to Africa, West Africa, you're gonna get picked last. The only place that you're gonna get treated special is East Africa, because you look like a Nigerian. That's why if you're African American, you're gonna have success in East Africa, right? Because you look like a Nigerian, period. They're gonna ask you if you're Nigerian, and then when you tell them you're American, they're gonna be like, oh, same thing. Right? Just with a little extra bump. You get an extra point. You get one little extra point. Maybe, because Nigerians be balling. All right? You'll have the same success as a West African would going to East Africa. So that's why a lot of African Americans who were put in the friend zone for the majority of their lives, who sit in front of computers, fat, bald, and ugly and short, that's why when they go to East Africa, they have more success, because they are attracted to the West African man. It's just what it is. Right? So you get that little bit of bump. But like I said, in reality, the reason why you won't have success and why you have some people giving bad reviews about West Africa is because they don't have game and they can't compete with their fellow black man that look like them, and they can't get their opposite, which is that beautiful black thick chocolate West African woman that they wish they could get here, but they hate them because they can't get them here. Then they go there and realize they can't get them there either. Right? That's the whole thing, and that's the truth. But anyway, I'm hoping that the African people on these places that's being openly disrespected by these Pookie and Ray Rays that can afford a plane ticket to go over there and look for cheap hookers as they search the continent for places that got the little nightlife where the hooker lifestyle is popping. Just understand that these people don't represent African Americans. These are the lowest bottom dwelling portions of African Americans, and that's what they're doing. They're not ready. They're not mature. They're not ready. The ones that's being disrespectful. I'm not including the ones that go over there and do it right. I'm not including the ones that go over there and that's respectful. I'm not including none of the ones that go over there looking for wives. I'm not including the ones that go over there that want culture, that want more than just looking for cheap hookers in any random country. All right, but be prepared that there are going to be some piece of shit African Americans who go to exploit African women, you know, for their own personal needs, but they have no intentions of wifing any of you guys up. They have no intentions of being an actual asset to your communities. So you make sure you treat them the same way you would treat a piece of shit black dude in your country that ain't worth shit anyway. All right, you put them in the same category and don't give them special treatment just because they speak American English, you know, and not, you know, the Queen's British English as a second language, because that's what they speak over there. All right. Anyway, that's all I got to say. This Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach them. I'm out.